This is the Fire Maple cooking kit with a gas system. If you're interested in hearing my thoughts on this product, keep watching. Before we get started, a few things. First, I'd like to thank Fire Maple for sending out their cooking kit with gas system so that I could share it with you. Now, the thing you need to know is that this is Fire Maple's response to the Trangia cook systems, or maybe inspired by. It is not a clone. There are some real differences, although a lot of it does look very similar, and it does nest together in a similar way. So this is not a unique product, just a different take on an old product. In fact, what I'm going to be doing is comparing this with my Trangia set that I have, at least as close as I can, and just to show you how the two systems are similar and are different. Now, the next thing you need to know is that Gina and I took this away with us on our 2-week camping trip to COOKSET National Park. We used some of the components daily. Couple of components we used a few times, more for testing than anything else. I'll explain when I get to the demonstration parts of it. So what I thought I'd do is just come down to the tabletop where I can show you what is all within the kit. Then I'll bring in my Trangia kit and we'll go through it so that you can see the similarities and the differences. In an effort to save a little bit of time in this video, what I'll do is I'm going to leave all the detailed specifications in the video description if you want to go and see dimensions and all that type of thing. I will be mentioning some of the specifications, specifically the volumes of the pots and that type of thing, because it's relative to comparing it with the Trangia system. So I'll quickly go through each of the components and then I'll bring my Trangia system in. So the things to get out of the way right away, of course, is yes, it does come with a manual. And yes, it does come with this stuffed sack. All right, so let's start. I'm going to start right at the bottom with the windscreen so that you can see the windscreen, two-piece windscreen. Very similar to the Trangia version. There is a subtle difference. I'll explain that in a minute. But you can see the concept is basically the same. And the bottom of the pan, or the bottom of the set, you're going to have your fry pan. And I don't know if it's going to show up on this or not, but before I took it away camping, I was able to give this a seasoning with a seed oil. And I seasoned it up just like you would cast iron, and it worked out well. What I did find, though, is that it didn't last that long, especially if you scrubbed it, it started to come loose. So I ended up taking the seasoning off. There's still some left behind on it. But what I want to say is that you can season these because they are anodized, hard anodized aluminum, and they will take a seasoning. But even without the seasoning, they're somewhat non-stick. So I'll just point that out, but I will come back to that in a minute. So obviously there is the pan. Now the pan itself is a 0.9 liter. So that's important. Dimensions and everything else in the video description as mentioned. Then you have your pot set. So there are 2 pots of different sizes and a kettle. Then let me just show you the 2 pots. So you get pots with lids, 1.5 liters, 2 liter. Nice to have those. Now, this is obviously not a one-person setup, unless, of course, you wanted to take just 1 or 2 of the items, maybe the smaller pot or the larger pot, plus the pan, plus the kettle. I mean, you mix and match the way you want, but they do all nest together, and you actually have a cook system that is capable of working for 2 people for, quite large meals for extended period of time. So you do get those 2 pots. And you get this kettle. Now, this kettle is actually quite big, and we kind of liked it. A 1.3 liter kettle. As you can see, it's quite big inside. Again, also hard anodized. Now, there are a few items inside of the kettle. Actually, it came with a couple of items inside of the kettle. Some of them I'm keeping outside. I'll explain. So this is the gas system, and it is similar to, but not identical to, the one that you would get for the Trangia, but it works essentially the same way. So you can use this with the system inside of the windscreens. You can also use a Trangia. It works just as well as the Trangia set with a Trangia, but there is some differences between this gas burner and the Trangia gas burner. I'll come back to that in a moment. The other things you get, now I took them out, but they were inside of the kettle. Great place to store them, except I just didn't like them rattling around. I had a little nylon stuff sack for this, so I just placed them all in there. Pot grabber, Nice little pot grabber, lightweight, again, anodized aluminum. And these four little step affairs are what are used with the windscreen to set your pan and your pots at different levels. And now I'm going to have some comments on that in a few moments' time, but I think first what I'll do is just kind of assemble everything and show you how you would use the set. Then I'll bring the Trangia in. All right, if you're going to use this with a Trangia, it would just sit in top, and then you'd place the top part of the windscreen on top of the base. If you're going to use it with the gas attachment, feed the hose through. There is a hole on the side, just like there would be on the Trangia version, where you can feed it out through and snap it down into place. Now you're good to go. Well, of course you do have to attach it to your gas canister. Now, here is the way that the windscreen attaches to the base for this unit. It's different than it is with the Trangia, and this will be one of my first comments, a con towards this unit. And that is there are tabs, 3 tabs, that are kind of like hooks. Hopefully let's see that's showing up there. Can you see how that's a hook? There are slots in the base that would match up with these. And the first time I went to use this, I discovered that I could not get them to engage. Reason being is, from having sat one inside of the other, these tabs got pushed down a little bit. So they got flattened out and then they wouldn't engage with the slots. Easy enough to fix. You can just very easily bend them up only enough that you need to. Then you can engage the slots and lock it into place. Even now, they're not quite ready. There we go. I think that's locked into place now. Here's my con. It's different than the Trangia, as you'll see, and I think it may be a weak point in the attachment between the windscreen and the base, because if they keep getting flexed back and forth from storing them, manipulate them in any way, sooner or later, metal fatigue is going to set in and they're going to come off. As they function right now, they function very well. I'm just not a little bit concerned about the durability of it over the long term. All right, now here is where those step type things come in. They hook onto the side of the windscreen, like so. And now you're ready to place your pan or your pots in. Let's just start with the pan. It sits on the top, well, yes, I guess you would call it the top step. It's not the very top of the windscreen, so it's still just down inside of it. So there, it sits on nice, easily enough to put on, put off. I like that it gives you a little bit more distance away from the flame, regardless if it's the gas burner or the Trangia, the alcohol burner, because you want a little bit of diffusion of the flame before it comes in contact with the bottom of the pan. That way you're less likely, I won't say you won't, but you're less likely to get a centralized hot spot and therefore burn things. So you just get a little bit more control over it that way. So we can take that off, and now we can put any of the 2 pots on. That one also sits on top, but I'll tell you this, it barely, because it's only a slight bit smaller, or because it's a slight bit smaller in diameter than the pan, it doesn't want to sit on that top quite as well. I mean, it's not dangerous, but you can see it wouldn't take much to kind of knock it off the center. But having said that, the smaller pan goes down to the next step on those holders very stably and sits in a little closer inside of the pan, so you get a little bit more wind protection as well. So that one works out very well. And of course the kettle also sits on there very well. So the system works. It has a few peculiarities in terms of the larger pot not being perfect in terms of fitting on, but very close. Maybe they could have made the steps just a little bit extended out. My comment is going to be on the steps themselves. All right, I've lost one. Yeah, I can get by with 3 of these. It'll still work, but I've lost 2. Not so much now. That's not going to be very stable. They are not permanently affixed to the windscreen, and therefore the risk of getting lost. So that's my comment on the pot stands. But if If you have them, as long as you still have them, they're going to work just fine. Now, what I'll do is I'll set this over to the side, at least some of the pieces, so I have some room to bring in the Trangia, and then we'll do a side-by-side comparison. All right, so this is my Trangia system. A few things I have to mention before we do the comparison. Number one, I bought this at a thrift store for the incredible low price of $4.99. You're not likely to see that ever again. And of course, I recognized what it was and I grabbed it. Only thing was, it was missing a couple of pieces, so it didn't have everything. So what I show you inside, some of them are my additions to this. It did come with the strap, the binding strap for it, of course, which was nice, but I made a little stuff sack for it. But it was missing the kettle and it was missing the pot grabber. Easy enough. I found things that worked for it just fine. The other thing you need to know is this is the Model 25. The Model 25 is the larger of the two sets, the Model 27 being the smaller. Also, this is what they call the dual sol. I think I'm pronouncing that right. It's a hybrid aluminum stainless steel version, usually one that's a bit more expensive, of course, heavier, sturdier, but a bit more expensive than the base versions. So this is what I have to show you. The thing about them is, regardless if it's the Model 25, the Model 27, functionally, they are all the same. The only difference being the sizes, the dimensions, the volumes, and that type of thing. Otherwise, they're pretty much the same. Now, what I'm going to do is, because it's not truly an apples to apples kind of a comparison between the two sets, is I'm going to be doing as close a comparison I can in the video description. And what I mean is, I priced out what a hard anodized aluminum Model 27 Trangia set would cost. So I put all the pieces to make it as close as possible, including the fact that I priced the gas attachment that you couldn't buy for your Model 25, 27, same thing. The gas attachment, I put those prices in just so you can get as close a model to the Fire Maple for doing the cost comparisons. And I'll tell you now, if you can put up with, or you're okay with, those few deficiencies like the hooks and that type of thing, this is half the price, maybe even lower. But there's a few things you need to know about where they're similar and where they're different. All right, so let's start. So here's the pan. The pan, in this case, larger, and you can see it is stainless steel on the inside, but that's not relative to the size, because this is closer to the 25 or the 27 in size than it is the 25. Inside of this, here's one of the things I was missing, was a kettle. This is just a little Alox kettle that I've had for many, 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 many years. So very much the same size as the one that Trangia includes, and it fits inside. Maybe someday I'll buy an original, because it'd be nice to have the set complete with the original. Inside of that are the two pots. Now, the two pots are different sizes, and one thing they do not have is lids. So that's where the fry pan comes in. The fry pan can act as a lid for either of the two pots. Again, this is the stainless aluminum version. Now, I did add one thing to this, and that is this multi-holder is the best way to describe it. This is designed by Trangia, so you can place it inside the 25 or the 27 to hold odd size pots, pans, kettles, whatever. You can even put in a small, well, you can see, it'll hold even like down maybe a 750 or even a 500 milliliter cup or whatever you want inside of this, where the included pot holders don't work. Before I get to the pot holders, I want to show you how the base and the windscreen go together. So this is the base. As you can see, it's almost identical, right? In the same size, hole for the gas attachment to come out. But here's where things different. And this is the way the top or the windscreen attaches to the base. There are three nubs, protrusions, not with a notch, around the outside, and matching cutouts on the windscreen, so that when you lay them, match them up, lay them over top of each other, and then turn it, it locks in nicely. And as far as I can see, without some type of traumatic damage being done to these, you're not going to affect them. It's not going to be affected by placing one inside of the other like you might do for storage. It's not going to be affected by randomly pushing down on it like it might with the Fire Maple. So that's one significant difference, and I think a much better system on the Trangia. Now, the other thing is the pot holders. The pot holders are permanently affixed to the inside of the windscreen, and they're done so with a impressed wire that goes all the way, stainless steel wire that goes all the way around, pressed right into the groove up here. And the height adjustments are permanently affixed. You just flick them out of the way. You can have them up, standing up like this. This will manage your fry pan with a little bit of a gap, which is nice, above the rest of the windscreen. You can drop them down inside and fix either the large pot or the small pot, and they both sit on very securely. And not my kettle. My kettle is not quite the same size as the Trangia one, and that's where this item comes in. So this is the one I mentioned. This is designed to fit on those 3 holders. Now I can put my kettle in, and it works just fine. All right, so that's the similarities and the differences between these 2 kits. Let's just talk for a few minutes about the pros and cons owning one over the other. All right, I wanted to talk for a moment about comparing the Fire Maple COOKSET with the Trangia COOKSET to help you decide if either one of these are something you may want to invest in, because there is more than just the unit cost to take into consideration in that decision. First off, the Trangia, been around for a long time. A very long time, and it is a proven system. It works, and you just have to ask anybody that owns one of these systems, and they'll vouch for it without hesitation, I'm sure. I love mine. I honestly don't use it all that much because it is a rather large system, and most of the time I'm going out by myself. But if I'm going out 2 or more people, this probably would be the cook system I would reach for because of the nesting, the versatility, the capability of it. Yeah, I think it makes a great system for that purposes. Not a one-person ultralight system by any means, especially my version, which is the combination stainless steel aluminum hybrid. But when you're looking at the Fire Maple, well, first off, let's just consider unit price. So for the Fire Maple, you get that entire system of the pots, the pans, the stuff sacks, and the gas burner, no alcohol burner, just the gas burner, for just about $117 US. And I'll let you convert that to Canadian if you're a Canadian audience right now. Then I looked at the closest competitor from Trangia, and I went to the Canadian Outdoor Equipment here in Canada to price that out. So that's where the link I'll be providing goes to. And that system, without the gas burner, came in at $229.75 Canadian. But then I factored in the gas burner and removed the alcohol burner, because they do include the alcohol burner in theirs. And what I got was a total Canadian of $313.75. I converted that back to American, and I got a grand total of $228.53. Almost twice the cost of the Fire Maple. So that's a major consideration for a lot of people. I know it would be for me. If I was looking at purchasing one of these, cost would be a huge influence on which one I decided I wanted to buy. But not the only thing to take into consideration. There are just, as far as I can see it, just 2 downsides to the Fire Maple kit that you have to take into consideration. One is the mounting system of the base to the windscreen, where those tabs lock in or don't. That's the issue, is sometimes they don't and they need to be bent. If they ever do fail, I think I can probably still use the kit, but I would question whether or not it would be as stable without being able to lock them in the way they're intended. That's issue number 1. The other one was the pot holders. Yes, you get 4 of them and you can get away with 3, but they're separate from the windscreen. They're not fixed to it. That means they're subject to getting lost. I'm sure there are replacements Fire Maple have, but if you're in the woods and you're already down to 3 and you lose one, it's going to be harder to use this set than it would be. Obviously, the Trangia, you're not going to lose them because they're permanently affixed to it. So those are the major differences I can see. Now, I don't have the hard anodized set from Trangia. That's the one I based the costing on, the Model 27HA, hard anodized. It would be nice to see what their hard anodization looks like with comparison to the Fire Maple, but honestly, I'm happy with the fire maple, and as I mentioned, I've used a lot of their pots and pans with this anodization, and it has stood up very well. Even takes a seasoning, as I mentioned in the opening. So I don't think that is so much of a factor in making the decision. I think the factors to take are the cost, the initial cost of purchasing them, and the whether or not you're okay with the way the windscreen and base attach together, and whether or not you're okay with the way the pot holders are not affixed to the system. Okay, I think that's everything I need to say about using them. They both work very well. I don't think functionally there's a huge difference. Oh, okay, maybe one. That unsteadiness of the larger of the two pots inside of the fire maple. It never dropped out of me, but it came close a few times. Now, I did mention in the opening, this is the last thing I want to say, that I used the pots. I used both of the pots and the fry pan daily, or we did, Gina and I, daily. But I only used the windscreen a few times, more for testing. Reason being is we have a Coleman gas stove, so that's where most of the cooking was done. But I did want to test it out to make sure I understood it and see how well it worked. And it works according to the way you want it to. That's what I'll say. All right, if you have any comments or questions, put those in the comments section below. Again, I'll be putting the links as well as all the specifications in the video description. But until next time, get out and explore and take that path less traveled, because it will make all the difference. Bye for now.